Well, looks like we got another rap feud on our hands, folks. And is anyone at all that surprised? I mean, it's just the way things are. Like the sky will always be blue. Space Jam will always be the best kids movie ever made, and rappers will always find a way to take jabs at their competition. Only this time, we might have to go back in time a little bit because this feud has a long history, and it keeps giving. At the start of the thousands, any hip-hop head would know the spat that happened between Nas and Jay-Z. It makes sense though, right? I mean, both of them came up from the streets, they both repped for their New York upbringing, and they were the next contenders to claim the throne that Biggie Smalls had left in the 90s. Then again, Jay may not have been the most respectful to his adoptive big brother around this time. That's just Nas' side of the story though. In the light of some resurfaced tapes from around this time, an old interview recently turned up of Nas talking about running into Jay at a party. When talking to Jay that night, Hov had apparently made comments that he was bigger than Biggie ever was at that point. Granted, this is also the time where Nas was coming off of Stillmatic, so it's anyone's guess whether this kind of statement is true or not. I mean, you don't just make a song like Ether and then try to boost up the guy or anything, but this kind of strikes you as something that Jay wouldn't say. For the longest time, Jay was the young and hungry rapper off of Reasonable Doubt, just coming off of Rockefeller and following in Biggie's footsteps. In the years since too, Hov has usually been positive talking about Biggie. Just listening to Ye talk about Jay's relationship on Big Brother, and you know that he has at least had respect for one of the greatest rappers of the 90s. Then again, does Jay have a point here? Not to stir up anything, but this was the Jay-Z that was fresh off of making the Blueprint, with songs like Heart of the City and RIZZLE, HOVA, rewriting the rule book on how people saw the New York hip-hop scene. No respect to Nas, but outside of Ether, it's been a long time since we've seen something of the level of Illmatic or anything. I'm not saying that Biggie has been outshone by Jay, but he just didn't have the time to make it last. What happened to Biggie was a tragedy, but Ready to Die is still a classic no matter what kind of hip-hop you're into. But Jay has put in the miles on hip-hop terms, and with the Black album still coming up for him at this time, and even reigniting his career with 444 just a few years ago, it's odd to hear this kind of thing come back around. But Nas also alleged that Jay had a few choice words about some of his other fellow legends. During the interview, Nas also talked about Jay putting down some people like DMX and Tupac, saying that they were the kind of hip-hop that only caters to people coming off the streets. Okay, this is where it starts to get a little more contentious. First off, it's no secret that DMX has had a few little spats with Jay over the years, almost using his collab with Nas as a slap right to his face. But to say that Tupac didn't have anything outside of the streets? Dude, what are you trying to say? I mean, this isn't some random gangster making beats in his spare time. Tupac is one of the greatest rappers to ever walk the earth and has even managed to grow with time. My guy still has different verses coming out years after his death, and each of them could have gone toe-to-toe with any of Jay's bars now. From a raw execution standpoint too, Tupac might wipe the floor with Jay if they had to duke it out. As much as his stuff was about his upbringing in the streets, Shakur still had some of the most poetic lines of any MC, period. Just the line, "I ain't a killer, but don't push me," lets you know that this is a man who has done some living and is letting it all out in front of the microphone. Not that, Jay hasn't done that as well, it's just that real means recognize real. While the Biggie comment may have been hard to stomach, the Tupac diss might have been a much worse dig to come out at this point. Though his legacy has been secure since the 90s, Tupac feels more relevant than ever. Like take Kendrick, for example. The entire premise behind To Pimp a Butterfly was about making peace with his hood past and ends with him having a conversation with deceased Tupac. This is the here and now too, not just some nostalgia trip. By taking a jab at Tupac Shakur in this climate, Jay looks more behind the times than he ever did before. Jay did at least earn his stripes as a major player though. I mean, you can see from people in the game now that they've adopted the business mindset that Hov made popular. Without Jay, we wouldn't have Drake, Future, and probably not DJ Khaled if we're being real. Not that the last one's necessarily a good thing. A bit of a mixed blessing, but we wouldn't have that up-and-coming dude with a promising future named Kanye West. So yeah, Jay is certainly a well-respected player in the game, but it just sounds weird for him to be batting down all of his fellow legends at that point. I mean, that just leaves you to decide. Do we take Nas seriously on this? Well, the man has never minced words in his bars, so he can definitely speak his mind if he wants. It's not like Nas himself doesn't have credit either. The fact that Illmatic, exists puts him in the god tier of rappers for life. But, where was Nas when he was making this statement, right? This was the era where the dust up between him and Jay was really starting to heat up. Even though most people aren't sure when it happened, it usually comes down to when Nas allegedly bailed on Jay during a recording session. But for all we know, Nas thinks that the beef was stemmed from giving him an "I told you so" moment, even though Nas never wanted to start beef in the first place. It also makes sense that this was brought up in a street-level interview, with Nas himself saying that he wanted to keep this fairly close to the ground. This is the kind of juicy gossip that keeps fans buzzing from the minute they hear it. Or is Nas keeping it a street level because he knows that he's just speculating? Come on, if Nas actually had something this juicy on Jay, he probably would have blown it up to epic proportions to spark the feud even more. Since Stillmatic was coming out around the same time as Blueprint, this is the kind of dig that could make Jay's star power sink like a stone. Who knows? If this actually got brought up at the time, we may have been living in a world where Nas comes out on top as the power player in this industry. Nowadays, though, we might have to chalk this one up to just speculation. For as many times as they claim to have reconciled over the years, there's always going to be some tough love between Nas and Jay-Z until the end of time. Will we have it any other way, though? Even though these beefs, arguably, costs us the lives of both Tupac and Biggie, it does end up sparking some of the greatest songs of their careers. Like, are we just gonna forget that Tupac got angry and made "Hit 'Em Up" specifically to get back at his competition? The same thing goes on between these two. We got Jay giving Eminem a few bars to vent on Renegade, which becomes one of the best cuts on the album. On the other hand, you got Nas blowing off steam in the studio and turning his style around with Ether. Maybe there's a little bit more magic in between these hurt feelings than we actually realize. It's just strange how this comes up now, though. Considering both men haven't been on the best of terms, maybe this is signaling something even more harsh is coming on the horizon. Nas has just been chilling after getting his Grammy nod for King's Disease, and I imagine that Jay is commitments with 4,000 other ventures that he's got going on right now. But this might mean that we're in for something even more fiery. If we're in for another feud, this might be what brings Jay and Nas back to the limelight again. Although pretty much everything Jay has made in the past few years has turned gold, this kind of anger could be what fuels him to make something a lot harsher than what was going on 444. As for Nas, this might be the time where he actually gets some fire under his belly and get back into the Illmatic side of things. Yeah, I know people talk about that record like it's lightning in a bottle, but if Nas saw the angry young man that he was back then, maybe he can bring out that persona again for one last ride. It's not like fans wouldn't want to see these dust-ups again either. I mean, in a world where the baby's comments are spreading like wildfire right now, could you imagine what would happen if Jay actually got dark on us all of a sudden? The entire rap game could collapse in on itself. I mean, say what you want about the drama right now, but there's no way that you wouldn't be able to contain that kind of excitement, right? Then again, it's all speculation as of right now. At this point, all we have to do is sit back and wait. See if Jay comes out of the blue to clarify his statements, or if Nas wants to double down on what he said. I mean, if DMX, Biggie, or Tupac were still around today, you better believe that they want to hear something from Jay to back up what he said. Until then, I guess we're just gonna have to keep our ears close to the ground. But what do y'all think? Did Jay really have that much of an ego on him, or do you think that Nas is just trying to start something up again? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments and let everybody know. Other than that, be sure to like and subscribe and make sure to tune into RIZZLE for the latest in hip-hop news. And remember, keep it RIZZLE.